So welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School where we talk to all kinds of people, famous quilters, regular quilters, lawyers, industry people, and today we're talking to Timna Tarr. She is a quilter, and she is a quilter, she's a teacher, she writes books, and she has her own solo show going on starting in the summer at New England Quilt Museum. We are super excited to talk to her about all things quilty, and here we go.
Timna Tarr, and people often think my name is Timna Tarr when they see it spelled out, but
That's interesting.
Timna is my first name.
Yes. Where are you calling from?
I'm in South Hadley, Massachusetts,
Awesome.
So the western part of
Yeah,
Massachusetts.
my mother-in-law's name is Ina Gard, and she said nobody can know where her first name begins and ends, and she was insistent we name our child something that did not have that problem, because she was just like, they don't know if it's Ina Gard. They think nobody, it's that kind of, it's like the same sort of problem you have. They can't quite figure out where it all goes. Yeah.
My child has a name that is recognizable, a first name, for that reason.
It really is. It's interesting, the generational kind of like what it is. Well, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So our first question is, what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
Oh, I don't know. They've been in my life my whole
time.
life.
Just all the time.
Yeah, so it's always there.
It's always been there. And then what about your experiences? When did you start sewing? Was it always been there too? For me, it's always I've always done that. So is that true for you?
My mom made me learn to sew when I was about 6, and my sister was born then. So I had to sew her diapers, and I was very bitter about it. And I'm still bitter about it.
You're still bitter about it.
Yeah, but that's how I learned to sew.
I have some bitter childhood I won't let go of. Tell me, why were you bitter about making the diapers?
Oh, because why was it my job?
Why was it your responsibility? Indeed.
Right.
I like that a lot. Okay, so let's go back. So one of the things we're doing with our guests this season is we're taking you back to 2019. And we're trying to understand sort of what life was like before all of this hit. So tell me about your life in 2019. What were you doing? Sort of what was going on?
I was doing a lot of teaching, a lot of traveling. Just like on the move all the time.
Yeah.
And then, 2020 hit and everything stopped.
Right. So do you have that memory of like that March period? Like, take us back to sort of how quickly did everything stop for you and where were you?
Yeah, I was in Baltimore the weekend before basically everything shut down. And I was in the airport, like not touching anything, like very carefully, like not using my elbows to open doors, things like that. I'm very clear memory of that. And then so happy to be home, like the Sunday before we shut down on Friday. Yeah, so then it's interesting. It just came up in my Facebook memories. I panicked because all of my gigs for months were just canceled. And that was, my income. And so I got a class up on like an online on-demand class by March 30th of that year.
That was
so
fast.
That was fast. I was obviously like, holy crap, I got to figure something out like really fast. And I'm glad I did, because otherwise I'd have dragging it out forever and putzed around.
This sort of notion of necessity makes you just do it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. And then what was it like for that year and a half where most people were, not most, but many people were kind of in their house just waiting for the vaccine and medications that would make things better?
Well, luckily I had an outside studio space, so I could actually go to my studio at that time, leave the house. But I sewed a lot in that time, and I made a lot of stuff that's not that great, not that good. But I was really conscious about just sewing, just like the therapeutic part of sewing. So I made a lot of like charity quilts. I donated a lot of quilts. I made some big things that are very chaotic now that I look at them.
Isn't that interesting? I think that's really interesting that it maps sort of what's happening. Like, you don't really realize your art is mapping sort of your experiences until later, sometimes when you're in the midst of it. That's really interesting. Be interesting to see how other people's work, what it looks like. Can you tell it's a COVID era work? Would be really interesting,
I think some people for sure, like mine, you can totally tell they're either like very, very chaotic or really just nothing, very boring.
I think that's really fascinating. Um, okay, so tell us a little bit about your solo exhibit. Do you have more than one going? It seems like there's. Do you have different themed solo exhibits, or do you have? Tell me about your solo exhibits.
So I have a couple this summer. I'm going to have a little exhibit at the, well, little, it's like eight quilts, I think, at the Reno Quilt Show in Nevada in June, I think, early summer. And then I'm going to have a bigger show at the New England Quilt Museum the end of July through September. And that one is 20 plus quilts, and it's going to span work from 2009 till things I'm
That
like
is so
literally
insanely
quilt on
exciting.
my floor
So
right now that needs to be
how do
bound.
you? So I'm sure you're very super excited. That's just insanely thrilling. Help me understand sort of what you do to get ready for 20 quilts at the like how does that work? Like is it just like what are you doing? Like that seems like a lot to sort of tell the narrative of that span of time and your work. So I'm curious what your
Well, a
thoughts
lot of it are the quilts available. And
Yes.
for one thing, so my daughter is graduating from high school, going to college in the fall.
Yeah.
So I didn't book a lot of travel this summer because I didn't know what her
Yeah.
schedule's going to be like.
Yeah.
So as a result, my quilts were available, which was just like happenstance. So yeah, it's like what quilts are available. The museum's also borrowing some quilts back that I
Oh,
don't
that's
own anymore,
exciting.
which will be really fun to see
That'll be
them.
great. That'll be
And
great.
so, yeah, so most of the quilts are done. There's a couple new things, the things I'm just finishing up. You need bindings, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's actually not as complicated as it could be.
And then in terms of designing the space, are you like, did you go there? Do you know, are they just putting them up any way they want or they're just putting up any way
Yeah,
they want?
they're handling that.
They're
I
handling
mean,
it.
I know the museum because it's not that far from my house. So
Oh, that's nice.
I know
Yeah.
the space.
That's really cool. And then the 20 quilts that are they all going to be in the same space? Are they doing a special exhibit? What does it look like? Do you have a sense of like what it will look like?
I have no idea. And I'm actually kind of excited because it's interesting to see how other people interpret your work.
Hugely.
So it'll be interesting to see how they hang them, what they put together, and
Yeah, hugely.
what's on the other side of the room.
Yeah,
I
I
have
love it.
no idea.
And that, for those listening, it will be at the New England Quilt Museum July 18th through the September 30th. And so that's really very, very exciting. Okay, so what about the little I'm so obsessed with this. So what about like the little cards or the information about the quilts? Like how much work is that? And what are your thoughts about all of that?
I'm writing the cards right now. So what happens is I give them the information and then they'll edit and tweak it
Yeah,
to fit the narrative they want
very
to
cool.
write. But yeah, it's been interesting because I keep file folders of all my quilts, like with, any dates
Yeah.
when I started making it, what the quilts are made out of, et cetera, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I've been going through those file folders and finding information that I had completely forgotten about. Like one quilt, I had listed the inspiration, and the inspiration is a documented old quilt at the Deerfield Historical Society. I have no recollection of
That's really
using
cool. I
that.
love that, right? It's this weird, like you're investigating your own self, which is really like, kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, this is very cool. Now, will you do anything like related to it, like a exhibit catalog or patterns or classes, or is there anything related to this that you have to do, or is it just the exhibit that you have to get ready for?
I'm going to do a talk, like a walkthrough talk, one day. But other than that, it's just send in the
Nice.
quilts.
That's very exciting. Very,
Yeah.
very cool. Did you have to get insurance, or do you need to do anything like the logistics of it? Sort of, are there costs involved in this in terms of like you getting them there, but then also insurance and other things?
Yeah, most of those quilts are already insured. So when I have a quilt that I know is going to go to shows, I get it appraised and insured. So most of them are already covered. And then the ones that I don't own, I'm not sure how that works. If the museum covers it, they must have
Right.
to cover it
They
somehow.
must
I'm
have
not
to
sure
cover
what
it.
the
Yeah.
policy is.
Tell me a little bit more about the appraisal and insurance process for quilts
You
for
have
your
frozen
quilts.
on me, Elizabeth.
Better? No? Still there? Still having a problem? Let's
Yeah.
see.
Oh, now you're back.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. Tell me a little bit about the appraisal and insurance policy. And is this a standard thing you see with quilters at your stage? I mean, at your level? Or do you feel like it's something that is unique to sort of what you do?
I think a lot of quilters do. So it has to be appraised by a certified quilt appraiser, and there's not that many of them in the country. And luckily, one of them belongs to my quilt guild,
Oh,
so
that's really
it's
great.
pretty easy. So often people will send their quilts to like a big show and have them appraised there because the
Yeah.
appraisers go. But then it goes on a fine arts rider on my insurance, my homeowner's
You found that
insurance.
interesting. Interesting. Um, Fabulous. And then once you sell that quilt, then then you just take it off the insurance kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's really much less expensive than you think it's going to be. Like I couldn't even give you a number right now, but if it's much lower than
Yeah.
you think it's going to be.
So what happens when have you ever had to file a claim on a quilt?
No,
No, you haven't yet.
no.
And it's
Cross
sort
your
of like, how
fingers.
do you like, right? So it gets appraised, but like it's its own special thing. So it feels like that's really hard. I mean, you'll get money back from it, and but I don't know. How do you it just? It seems hard.
I
Like you know.
I kind of feel like once I'm done making the quilt, I'm pretty much done with it. Like
Yeah,
I can sell it, it can leave.
you're fine with it.
I'm fine with it. So,
That's really good.
I mean, I would be upset, obviously, but
No, but I
I'll
like
move
that
on.
idea. Letting go is good. We interviewed Tula Pink like early on. This is I don't know how many, our season. And she said that she doesn't give her quilts away. And then when she does get them, she's so upset that she makes a replacement one.
No, I don't feel like that at all. I'm
I
like,
was
they're
like,
my
really?
children that are like
That's
moving
so
on with their lives.
interesting,
It's
right?
okay.
So yeah, so it sort of stuck with me of like, how much do you care about these things, or how much do they just go out in the world and live their own life and all that? So, very cool. Well, exciting. I can't wait. That is really cool. So again, the quilts of Timna Tarr, July 18th to September 30th, in Lowell, Massachusetts,
Yes.
at the New England Quilt Museum.
Yep.
So cool. Well, Pam Weeks is one of our very favorite humans on the planet, so it's exciting that you're there, and I'm sure you're working. Are you working with Pam and others there? Yeah, Pam's
Yeah.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's so insanely great. Okay, QuiltCon. So is QuiltCon like? Tell me what the role of QuiltCon. So QuiltCon is, for those listening that don't know, so QuiltCon is an annual show put on by the Modern Quilt Guild. And it is a little bit different than the other shows, I think. Would you say there's a little bit of I don't know. How do you explain how QuiltCon is different? I've been twice, I think, maybe once. Tell me exactly sort of how do you explain QuiltCon to quilters that may not understand what it is?
It's definitely a show of, I'm going to use quotes, modern quilts. And I would say that it's kind of a very graphic show. It's almost like a graphic design show
Yeah, I
versus
think
like
so too.
a late quilt show.
Yeah. And it's
So
smaller. It's not a
smaller.
gargantuan. It's not a Paducah like the whole city is. It's more intimate. It's a little more cool. I think it's like the cool kids. I mean, you can be not cool. I went, so I'm not cool. But I'm just
Same.
saying that it's got a kind of aesthetic coolness to it throughout the show. Like aesthetics matter to QuiltCon, I think. Would you say like everything
Yeah,
about
for
it
sure.
is about? I mean, it's beautiful quilts, gorgeous, gorgeous quilts. But there is a
There's a
focus
similar
on,
aesthetic.
yeah, right, and incredibly beautiful quilts. Not that other quilt shows aren't beautiful, but a lot of powerful quilts, a lot of some messaging in quilts, yeah, you're at QuiltCon. Like you could just open your eyes and be like, yeah, this is QuiltCon. And I don't think that's true of every show out there. I think they're more general than
Right.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say the one thing I love about QuiltCon is the energy is different than at
Yeah?
other shows.
Tell me about
Yeah.
the energy.
It's like when I started quilting 25 years ago, I was like the youngest quilter always. like
Yeah.
always, always. And there weren't that many of us. And
Yeah.
now there's